The story begins with a young boy named Adrian. He was the son of one of the richest men in the city, a billionaire who owned companies, buildings, and almost everything money could buy. Adrian's life looked perfect from the outside. He lived in a giant mansion with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and cars lined up like soldiers in the garage. Every morning, he was driven to school in a black luxury car. Everyone stared as the car arrived. His classmates whispered, "That's the billionaire's son." He had expensive clothes, the newest gadgets, and a future that seemed already written for him. But there was one thing Adrian could not buy. Success in school? The golden boy who couldn't shin Adrian was handsome, tall, and carried himself with the pride of wealth. But when it came to books, numbers, and exams, he failed again and again. Teachers shook their heads whenever his name appeared on the grade sheet. "Such a waste," one teacher whispered. Another said, "He has everything, but he can't even pass a simple test." His classmates laughed at him behind his back. Some mocked him to his face. "Hey, Adrian, did you fail again? Don't worry, your dad will pay for your grades." Adrian pretended not to care. He laughed with them, but inside, he was breaking. The pressure of a billionaire father at home, things were worse. His father was a powerful man with a cold face and eyes that expected nothing less than perfection. Every evening, he asked, "How were your results?" And every time Adrian failed, his father's voice grew sharper. "You shame me," he said one night. "Do you know what people say? They call my son a fool. You are supposed to be my heir. But how can a failure run my empire?" Adrian lowered his head. He wanted to scream, "I'm trying." But his father never listened. Loneliness behind Rich Walsh's mother stayed silent, too afraid to speak against her husband. The mansion was full of servants, but none of them really cared. They only bowed, served food, and left. Adrian felt like a prisoner in a golden cage. At night, he sat by the window of his giant room. Outside, the city lights sparkled, but inside, his heart felt empty. He whispered to himself, "Why am I like this? Why can't I do anything right?" No answer came. Only silence. The world against him at school. Rumors spread quickly. He failed again. His father must be so angry. He's rich but dumb. Adrian walked the halls hearing the whispers. He kept his head high, but every word cut deep. Sometimes he thought about giving up completely. Maybe they're right. Maybe I really am useless. But then, something unexpected happened. The quiet watcher every day. While Adrian suffered under the weight of jokes and failures, someone was silently watching him. It was not a teacher, not a classmate, not even his parents. It was the school janitor, an old man with rough hands, gray hair, and tired eyes. He moved quietly, mopping floors, fixing broken chairs, and carrying buckets. No one paid attention to him. To the students, he was invisible. To the teachers, was just another worker. But the janitor noticed Adrian. He saw the boy sitting alone after class, staring at his failed test papers. He saw the boy wiping his eyes quickly when he thought no one was looking. He saw the pain hidden behind expensive clothes and a proud walk. The day of shame one afternoon, the teacher returned the exam results. Adrian's paper had a big red mark. F. The class exploded with laughter. "Again? You failed again? Even my little brother could pass this." Adrian tried to smile, but his face burned with shame. He stuffed the paper in his bag and walked out. In the hallway, he heard two teachers whispering. His father should be ashamed. With all that money, he can't even hire a tutor. Adrian walked faster, his chest tight. He wanted to disappear. The janitor's eyes, as he rushed down the corridor, he almost bumped into the janitor. The old man looked at him carefully. Their eyes met for a moment. Adrian quickly turned away. "Sorry," he muttered, and walked off. But the janitor kept watching him. His eyes were not mocking. They were not pitying either. They were understanding. The breaking point that night, Adrian locked himself in his room. He threw his books on the floor. "What's the point?" He shouted, "No matter how hard I try, I fail. Maybe I am a fool. Maybe Dad is right. Maybe I'll never be anything. tears rolled down his face. For the first time, the boy who had everything felt like he had nothing. But outside his window, the moonlight fell quietly, as if promising something unseen. The suspense, and that's when the story truly begins. Because while everyone else laughed at Adrian's failures, while his father scolded him, while his classmates mocked him, one quiet man, the janitor, had already decided something. He would not let this boy's life be destroyed. He would not watch in silence anymore. Everyone thought money could save Adrian, but in truth, it was going to be the janitor. The next day at school, Adrian walked into the classroom with heavy steps. His classmates looked at him with mocking smiles. "Here comes the golden boy," one of them whispered. "Golden outside, empty inside," another replied, laughing. Adrian heard every word. He pretended not to care. But inside, the words hit him like stones. He sat at his desk and stared at the empty blackboard. His teacher hadn't arrived yet. The room was loud with laughter and chatter. Everyone was busy talking to each other. But Adrian sat alone, silent, invisible. Even though he was the richest boy in the room, a strange presence while Adrian sat in silence. A soft sound echoed in the hallway, the squeak of an old mop on the floor. It was the janitor. He pushed his mop slowly, cleaning the same corridor he had cleaned for years. His clothes were simple, his shoes worn out. He looked like any other tired worker, but his eyes were different, sharp, calm, and watchful. Most students didn't even notice him. To them, he was background noise. But Adrian noticed him now. He noticed because, unlike everyone else, the janitor's eyes didn't hold laughter or mockery. They held something else. Something Adrian couldn't name yet. The quiet man's secret observation. The janitor had seen hundreds of children pass through these hallways. Some were bright, some were lazy, some were cruel, and some were kind. But Adrian was different. On the outside, Adrian had everything: money, fame, respect. But the janitor could see through the mask. He saw the boy's trembling hands when exam papers were returned. He saw how Adrian walked faster whenever teachers whispered. He saw the boy's lonely eyes every time his classmates laughed at him. The janitor knew pain when he saw it. He had lived long enough to recognize it. After school silence that evening, the classrooms grew quiet as students left. Laughter faded, footsteps echoed down the corridor, and soon the school was almost empty. Adrian stayed behind. He sat at his desk, staring at his test paper again. The big red F felt like fire burning through his chest. He didn't notice that the janitor had entered the room to clean. The old man moved slowly, wiping the board, arranging chairs, sweeping the floor. He didn't say a word, but his eyes kept drifting toward Adrian. For a long time, the boy and the old man shared the same silence. First words finally, Adrian sighed heavily, crumpled the paper, and threw it into the trash bin. The janitor's broom stopped for a second. He bent down, picked up the crumpled paper, and gently opened it. Adrian looked up, annoyed. "Why are you looking at that?" he asked sharply. The janitor didn't answer right away. He stared at the paper, then looked at Adrian. "You failed," he said simply. His voice was calm, not mocking. Adrian's face turned red. "Yeah, so what? Everyone already knows. You don't have to remind me." The janitor placed the paper on Adrian's desk. His voice was soft, but firm. "Failure is not the end. It's just the beginning." A shock for Adrian. Adrian blinked. Nobody had ever spoken to him like that. Teachers scolded him. Classmates laughed at him. His father shouted at him. But this janitor. He spoke as if Adrian was more than his failure. Adrian laughed bitterly. "You don't understand? I'm a billionaire's son. Everyone expects me to be perfect. But I'm not. I keep failing, no matter how hard I try." "What do you know about that?" The janitor smiled faintly. His wrinkles deepened, his tired eyes softened. "I know more than you think," he replied quietly. The janitor's silent wisdom for the next few minutes. The janitor didn't speak. He just continued cleaning the classroom. But Adrian couldn't stop staring at him. Something about the old man's calmness felt unusual. Why are you telling me this? Adrian asked finally. The janitor paused, leaned on his broom, and looked directly into Adrian's eyes. Because I see a boy who is drowning, and I know what it feels like to drown. Adrian frowned. His chest tightened. For a moment, he wanted to ask, "What do you mean?" But before he could, the janitor turned and walked out of the classroom. The mystery deepens that night. Adrian couldn't sleep. The janitor's words echoed in his head. Failure is not the end. It's just the beginning. I know what it feels like to drown. Why did the janitor care? Why did his voice sound like he spoke from experience? Adrian had seen many people in his life, teachers, drivers, security guards, cooks, but no one had ever looked at him with such truth in their eyes. Whispers in the school the next morning. Gossip spread again. Did you see Adrian yesterday? He failed another test. His father must be furious. Adrian kept walking, ignoring them. But inside, something had changed. He couldn't stop thinking about the janitor. Every time he saw the old man sweeping floors or fixing a broken desk, Adrian felt a strange pull. Who was this man? Why did his words matter so much? The secret note one afternoon, as Adrian opened his desk, he found a small folded note. His heart raced. He looked around, but no one was near. The note had only 6 words. You are not what they say. Adrian froze. Who had written this? He checked the handwriting. It was rough, uneven, like someone who didn't write often. His eyes darted toward the door, where the janitor's shadow passed slowly with his mop. For the first time, Adrian felt something inside him stir. A tiny spark. Hope. Adrian was the son of a billionaire. Everyone thought his life was perfect. They saw the mansions, the luxury cars, the expensive clothes. They believed he had everything that money could buy. But no one saw what happened when the lights went out. No one saw the boy behind the golden mask. The mansion of silence at night. Adrian's home looked beautiful from the outside. Bright lights shone on the tall gates, fountains sparkled, and guards stood straight in their uniforms. It was a palace. But inside, the mansion was full of silence. The kind of silence that pressed on the chest, making it hard to breathe. Adrian's father sat in his office most evenings. Papers and numbers were more important to him than people. His mother sat quietly in the living room, staring at the floor, never daring to speak against her husband. Adrian, despite living in a house full of servants, felt completely alone. The father's harsh words one evening, his father called him into the office. The man's face was sharp, his suit perfect, his eyes cold. Another failure, he said without looking up from the papers. Adrian kept his head low. You shame me, his father continued. Do you know what people say? They laugh at me because of you. My son, the fool. My son, the weak one. Do you want to destroy everything I built? Adrian's heart pounded. He wanted to scream, I try. I really try. But no sound came out. His father finally looked at him, his voice like ice. You are not worthy of this family's name. The words cut deeper than any exam grade. The mother's silence after. The argument. Adrian's mother came to his room. She stood in the doorway, her face pale. Adrian, she whispered. He looked up with hope. Waiting for comfort, waiting for someone to finally tell him he was enough, but she only sighed and said, please, try harder. Your father's under a lot of pressure. Then she turned and left. The door closed. Adrian was alone again. Loneliness behind rich walls that night, he sat by the wide glass window of his bedroom. The city lights shone far away. Cars moved like tiny dots. People down there lived normal lives. Families laughed, children played, parents hugged their kids. Adrian pressed his forehead against the glass. Why can't I be like them? He whispered. He had everything money could buy, but not the one thing he truly needed: love. A secret pain at school. He wore his mask again. He walked proudly, pretending not to hear the laughter of classmates. But the truth was different. Every whisper broke him. Every laugh felt like a knife. Every red F on his paper pushed him deeper into despair, but he couldn't show it. He was the billionaire's son. He was supposed to be strong, untouchable. So he smiled in public, and cried in secret. The janitor's watchful eyes through all of this. The janitor noticed every day. While sweeping the hallways, he saw Adrian's forced smile. He noticed how the boy's shoulders dropped when he thought no one was watching. He saw him sit alone during lunch, pretending to scroll through his expensive phone. Hiding his loneliness, the janitor's heart grew heavy. He recognized the signs because he had once carried the same pain, the day of the hidden tears one afternoon. Adrian failed yet another test. His classmates laughed louder than usual. One boy even shouted, "Hey, Adrian, maybe your dad can buy you some brains." The classroom exploded in laughter. Adrian clenched his fists, but he said nothing. He stood up and walked out, his face calm. But in the restroom, away from everyone, his mask broke. Tears streamed down his face. He gripped the sink and whispered, "Why me? Why can't I do anything right?" He didn't notice the janitor passing by. The old man heard the whispers, but he didn't enter. He only stood outside the door, eyes closed, remembering his own past. The memory of pain, the janitor walked away quietly, but inside, his heart ached. Years ago, he too had been a boy full of dreams. He too had faced failure and laughter. He too had drowned in loneliness. And now, watching Adrian suffer reminded him of the same road he once walked, a road that nearly destroyed him. Adrian's breaking point that night. Adrian lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. His books lay scattered on the floor. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered. His chest felt heavy, his breathing shallow. For the first time, he truly believed he was worthless. But then, his eyes drifted to the small note he had found earlier. "You are not what they say," the words glowed in his memory. Who had written them? Why did they matter so much? And then he remembered the janitor. A new curiosity the next day, Adrian entered the school and searched the hallways. He saw the janitor sweeping near the staircase. For a moment, Adrian wanted to walk past, to ignore him. After all, he was just a janitor. What could he possibly know about his struggles? But something inside Adrian stopped him. The memory of those words. The calmness in the janitor's eyes. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, this man understood. Adrian stood there for a long time, watching. The janitor didn't look up. He kept sweeping, quiet, patient, as if time belonged to him alone. The school bell rang loudly, and students rushed out of their classrooms like a storm. Laughter, shouts, and footsteps filled the hallways. For most students, it was just another ordinary day. But for Adrian, the billionaire's son, nothing ever felt ordinary. His life looked golden on the outside, but inside, he carried a storm no one could see. He walked slowly toward his desk, his heart heavy with another day of whispers and laughter behind his back. Strange discovery as Adrian pulled out his chair and sat down. He noticed something unusual inside his desk. A small piece of folded paper. He frowned. Who would leave a note for him? His classmates only left cruel jokes or mocking messages. Carefully, he picked it up and unfolded it. The handwriting was rough, uneven, almost shaky. The message had only 6 words. "You are not what they say." Adrian stared at the words for a long time. His heart beat faster. Who wrote this? And why? Confusion and curiosity, he looked around the classroom. His classmates were busy packing their bags, laughing, and making plans for after school. None of them looked like they cared. For a moment, Adrian thought it was a cruel prank. Maybe someone was making fun of him again. But no, this note felt different. The words carried weight. They carried truth. He folded the paper back and slipped it into his pocket. The janitor's shadow as he left the classroom. Adrian noticed the janitor at the end of the hallway, slowly mopping the floor. The old man's back was bent, his movements steady. Adrian froze. The handwriting on the note, it looked like the kind of writing someone might have if they didn't write often. Could it be him? The thought made Adrian's chest tighten. Why would a janitor care about him? Why would he write such words? For the rest of the day, Adrian couldn't stop glancing at the old man whenever he saw him in the hallways. The restless night that night. Back in his massive room, Adrian pulled the note from his pocket again. He read it over and over. "You are not what they say," the words echoed in his head. For years, he had only heard what others said. "You're a failure, you're useless, you're not worthy." But this note was different. It was the first time someone had told him the opposite. Adrian lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe, just maybe, he was more than what everyone believed. Another day. Another failure. The next morning, the teacher handed out graded homework. Adrian's paper had another big red mark. His classmates laughed again. "Still failing, Adrian?" One boy mocked. "Better ask your dad to buy the teacher." Another shouted. The classroom roared with laughter. Adrian clenched his teeth and stayed quiet. But deep inside, the words of the note burned stronger than the laughter around him. "You are not what they say," the silent watcher after school. Adrian stayed back in the classroom, pretending to arrange his bag. He wanted to be alone. The janitor entered, carrying his mop and bucket. He began cleaning without saying a word. Adrian's eyes followed him. His heart raced. Should he ask? Should he say something about the note? But fear stopped him. What if he was wrong? What if the janitor laughed at him too? So Adrian stayed silent, and so did the janitor. Another note the next day, when Adrian opened his desk again. Another small piece of folded paper was waiting. This time, the handwriting was the same, rough. Uneven, but the words were different. "You are stronger than you believe." Adrian's eyes widened. His breath caught in his chest. Again, he looked around. His classmates were busy with their own lives. None of them would write something like this. Slowly, his eyes turned toward the janitor, who was sweeping the hallway outside. The growing mystery now, Adrian was certain. The notes were from him, but why? Why would a janitor, a man no one ever noticed, write such powerful words to him? Adrian felt both confused and curious. For the first time in years, he wanted to know someone's story. The silent conversation that afternoon. As Adrian prepared to leave, he stopped at the doorway of his classroom. The janitor was there, cleaning quietly. Adrian's hands trembled, but he finally spoke. "Was it you?" The janitor looked up slowly, his tired eyes meeting Adrian's. For a moment, he said nothing. His silence was louder than any answer. Adrian pulled the 2 notes from his pocket and held them up. "Did you write these?" The janitor's gaze softened, but he didn't confirm or deny. He only gave a small smile and continued mopping the floor. Adrian's racing thoughts that evening. Adrian sat at his desk at home, staring at the notes again. He whispered to himself, "Why me? Why is he helping me? What does he want from me?" But no matter how much he thought, he couldn't find an answer. For the first time in his life, Adrian wanted to go to school the next day, not for his classmates. Not for his teachers, but to see if another note would appear. For days, Adrian found small folded notes inside his desk. Each one carried words that felt like fire and comfort at the same time. "You are not what they say. You are stronger than you believe. Every failure is a step to strength." Each note was written in the same rough handwriting. Each note gave Adrian something he had never felt before, hope. And deep in his heart, he knew who was leaving them, the silent helper, the janitor. Every time Adrian entered the classroom early or stayed late, the old man was there, quiet, patient, cleaning floors or fixing desks. He never said much. He never explained. But Adrian could feel it. The notes came from him. Still, the boy had questions that burned inside. Why was this janitor helping him? Why did he care when no one else did? And what did he know about Adrian's struggles? The decision to speak one afternoon, after another long day of whispers and laughter from classmates, Adrian stayed behind again. His teacher left. The room emptied. The janitor entered, carrying his mop. His steps were slow but steady. He began to clean the blackboard, then moved to arrange the chairs. Adrian's heart pounded. He couldn't stay silent anymore. He stood up, his fists tight by his sides, and walked toward the old man. "Why?" he asked suddenly. The The janitor looked up, confused. Why? What, son? Adrian pulled the notes from his pocket, his hands trembling. These, why are you giving me these? The first words, the janitor stared at the notes in Adrian's hands. For a moment, silence filled the room. Finally, the old man sighed and leaned on his mop. Because you needed them, he said softly. Adrian's eyes widened. His voice shook. Why me? You don't even know me! The janitor gave a faint smile. His face was tired, but his eyes were kind. I know more than you think, he replied. The boy's anger. Adrian felt something explode inside him. His voice rose. No, you don't know me. You don't know what it feels like to fail every time. You don't know what it feels like when everyone laughs at you, when even your father calls you useless. You don't know? His words echoed in the empty classroom. The janitor didn't flinch. He let Adrian speak, let the pain pour out like water from a broken jar. When Adrian's voice finally broke into a whisper, the janitor spoke again. You're wrong, son. I do know. A gentle truth. Adrian froze. His chest heaved as he tried to process those words. The janitor walked closer, his footsteps slow, his broom forgotten. He placed a rough, calloused hand on Adrian's shoulder. I see your pain. I see the way you walk with your head held high, but your eyes heavy with sorrow. I see the way you fight to hide your tears. You think no one notices, but I do. Adrian swallowed hard. No one. Not his father, not his teachers. Not even his mother had ever said words like these to him. The lesson begins. The janitor pulled a chair and sat down. Adrian sat across from him. For the first time, it felt like someone truly wanted to listen. Tell me. Son, the janitor asked gently, why do you think you fail? Adrian looked at the floor. Because I'm stupid. Because no matter how much I study, nothing stays in my head. Because maybe I'll never be enough. The janitor shook his head slowly. No, you fail because you believe the lies others tell you. You have allowed their voices to become your truth. Adrian frowned. But it's true. I always fail. The janitor leaned forward. His eyes were sharp now, full of fire. Failure is not truth. It's just a result. And results can change. Truth is what you decide to believe about yourself. The boy who listened, Adrian's heart pounded. His whole life, he had been told he was worthless. Teachers, classmates, even his father repeated it until he believed it. But this janitor, this simple, unnoticed man was telling him something new. Something that sounded impossible, but also possible, Adrian whispered. How do you know this? The janitor smiled faintly. Because once I was like you. The mystery deepens. Adrian's eyes widened. He wanted to ask more, but the janitor stood up, picked up his mop, and returned to his work. Go home now, son, he said quietly. Rest. Tomorrow is another day. Adrian hesitated. Will you? Will you leave another note? The janitor chuckled softly. Maybe. Or maybe now. You don't need notes. Maybe now you need to believe. Adrian left the classroom that day with a heart heavier with questions, but lighter with something else to hope. The sleepless night that night, Adrian couldn't sleep. He replayed the conversation again and again. The janitor's words echoed in his mind. Failure is not truth. It's just a result. Truth is what you decide to believe about yourself. Adrian sat up in bed, staring at the moonlight streaming through his window. For the first time in years, he didn't feel completely broken. Adrian woke up the next morning with a strange feeling. It wasn't the usual heaviness of failure. It wasn't the sharp sting of his father's harsh words. It was something different. It was curiosity. The janitor's voice still echoed in his head. Failure is not truth. It's just a result. Truth is what you decide to believe about yourself. He didn't understand it fully, but for the first time he wanted to. A new kind of lesson that afternoon. Adrian stayed behind again. The classroom emptied, the voices of students faded, and once more, it was just him and the janitor. The old man glanced at him with a knowing smile. "Still here, son?" Adrian nodded. "Aye. I want to know more." The janitor set his broom aside and sat on the desk. His eyes carried both weariness and wisdom. "Then today we will start a different kind of lesson. Not from books, not from exams, but from life. Lesson 1. Patience. The janitor took out an old pocket watch from his coat. Its silver surface was scratched, but it still ticked steadily. He placed it on the desk in front of Adrian. "Tell me, what do you see?" "A broken, old watch," Adrian answered. The janitor chuckled. "Yes, it is old, but it still works. Do you know why? Because it is patient. Every tick, one at a time. It doesn't rush. It doesn't stop. That's how life is, son. Patience keeps us moving when everything else feels broken." Adrian touched the watch carefully, as if it held a secret. Patience. Nobody had ever told him that failing could be part of waiting, part of growing. Lesson 2. Work with your hands. The janitor stood and pointed at a loose chair leg. "Fix this," he said. Adrian frowned. "Me. But I don't know how." "That is why you will try," the old man replied firmly. Adrian bent down, struggled with the screws, and after several minutes he managed to tighten the chair. It wasn't perfect, but it stood steady. The janitor nodded. "Good. Now tell me, how do you feel?" Adrian blinked. Strangely. Proud. "Exactly," the janitor said. "When your own hands create or fix something, you taste real success. Books can give you knowledge, but work gives you strength. Never forget this." Lesson 3. Respect. The janitor handed Adrian the mop. "Your turn," he said with a smile. Adrian hesitated. "You want me to clean?" "Yes, because respect begins here. If you can respect the smallest job, you will respect the biggest victories." Adrian slowly began to mop the floor, feeling embarrassed at first. But as the floor shone under his effort, a strange peace filled him. The janitor watched carefully. "You see, son, money can buy services, but respect must be earned. Even the richest man must bow his head to the value of hard work." Adrian paused. His father had never said such words. In his father's world, respect was bought, not earned. Yet here was a man proving otherwise. The boys awakening day after day, Adrian returned. Some days, the janitor taught him to repair things. Other days, he taught him about discipline, waking up early, keeping promises, controlling anger. Sometimes he taught him only through silence, letting Adrian observe how he worked with patience and care. Slowly, something began to change inside the boy. He still struggled in class. He still faced whispers and laughter. But now, when he heard them, he didn't crumble, because deep in his heart, he carried the janitor's lessons like a shield. The father's eyes one evening. Adrian sat at the dinner table with his father. The billionaire was as cold and distant as ever. "You failed another exam," his father said sharply. "Do you enjoy embarrassing me?" Adrian's fork froze in his hand. Before, he would have lowered his head in shame. But this time, something inside him refused. He lifted his eyes. His voice was quiet but steady. "I don't enjoy failing, but I'm learning." His father's brows furrowed. "Learning? From whom?" "Your teachers call you hopeless." Adrian's lips pressed into a thin smile. "Maybe not from books, but from someone who knows what it means to fall and still stand up." The billionaire scoffed, dismissing his son's words. But for the first time, Adrian didn't feel crushed. He felt strong. The suspicious teachers at school, teachers began to notice Adrian's small changes. He was more focused. He no longer stormed out of class when mocked. He listened carefully, even when confused. Whispers began. "Is he changing? Do you think he'll pass next time?" "No, impossible." But Adrian didn't care about their voices anymore. For once, he cared only about his own growth, and always. In the corner of the room, the janitor's silent eyes followed. Proud yet hidden, the quiet bond one afternoon, Adrian asked the janitor a question that had been troubling him. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." You don't owe me anything. The old man smiled softly. Because once, someone helped me. And I promised myself that if I ever saw a boy drowning in the same darkness, I would not walk away. Adrian's heart tightened. The janitor's past was still a mystery, but one thing was clear. He cared, and that care was something Adrian had been searching for his whole life. The mansion was quiet that night, but the silence was heavy, sharp, almost dangerous. Adrian sat at the long dining table, staring at the untouched food in front of him. He could feel the storm coming. His father entered the room with slow, powerful steps, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, with eyes that carried both pride and coldness. The billionaire did not waste time. He placed a folder on the table with a hard thud. Inside were Adrian's latest results. All red marks. All failures. The billionaire's fury. Do you enjoy humiliating me, Adrian? His father's voice was low, but it carried fire. Adrian's chest tightened. He wanted to defend himself, but words refused to come. You have every resource, his father continued. Private tutors, the best school, the finest books. And still, you fail. Again and again. Tell me, what kind of son are you? The words cut deep, sharper than knives. Adrian lowered his head. He could feel the shame boiling in his blood. But deep inside, the janitor's voice echoed. Failure is not truth. It's just a result for the first time. Adrian tried to hold on to that instead of drowning in his father's rage. The son's attempt, Adrian spoke softly but firmly. I am trying, father. I really am trying. The billionaire's fists slammed the table. The glasses shook. Do you think the world rewards people for trying? No, it rewards winners. Only winners. Adrian swallowed his fear. Maybe books are not the only way to learn. The billionaire narrowed his eyes. What nonsense is this? Learning comes from education. From results? Not from excuses. Adrian's lips trembled. But then courage sparked. I am learning from someone who believes in me. The father's threat silence filled the room. His father leaned forward, his eyes sharp as steel. Who? Adrian froze. His mind raced. Should he tell him about the janitor? Should he reveal the man who had become his only source of hope? But before he could answer, his father snapped, Whoever it is, I will make sure they stay far from you. No one wastes my money. No one makes my son weak. Do you hear me, Adrian? The boy's stomach dropped. He clenched his fists under the table. For the first time in his life, he wanted to scream. To fight back, but he stayed silent. The night of tears later that night, Adrian locked himself in his room. He buried his face in his pillow and let the tears fall freely. Why was it so hard for his father to see him not as a failure, not as an investment, but as a son? His heart whispered the truth, because his father only saw numbers, results, and reputation. He didn't see Adrian at all, but then he remembered the janitor's voice. Respect begins with the smallest job. Patience keeps us moving when everything else feels broken. And suddenly, Adrian wiped his tears. He knew where he needed to go the next morning. The janitor's comfort at school. Adrian stayed back once more. The janitor was there, cleaning the hall as always. The boy's eyes were swollen from crying. The janitor noticed immediately. Tough night? He asked gently. Adrian nodded, unable to speak. The janitor leaned on his broom, waiting. Finally, the boy whispered, My father. He says, I'm a disgrace. He says, I'll never be enough. The janitor stepped closer. His voice was calm, but firm. Your father is powerful, but he is wrong. Adrian looked up, shocked. No one had ever dared say his father was wrong. The secret whisper, the janitor lowered his voice, almost to a whisper. Listen to me, Adrian. Your father's words are not your truth. They are his fears, his pride, his blindness. You are not a disgrace. You are a seed waiting to grow. Adrian's throat tightened. But what if I never grow? The janitor smiled faintly. You will, because I will not let you give up. And because deep inside, you already want to rise. That is enough. The father's shadow, but unknown to Adrian. His father was already suspicious. The billionaire had begun asking questions at school, pressing teachers. Even watching from his car outside the gates, he could not understand why his sons' spirits seemed different lately. Stronger, braver, and soon his eyes would fall on the very man Adrian trusted most, the janitor Dodd. Adrian had started to depend on the janitor's words. Every day he searched for the old man after classes ended. The janitor's lessons were different, sometimes spoken, sometimes shown, and sometimes hidden in silence. But one day, Adrian arrived early and found the janitor sitting alone in the empty classroom. He wasn't sweeping or fixing anything. He was just staring at the window, his old hands folded tightly, his eyes lost far away. For the first time, Adrian saw something unusual. The janitor's face looked broken. The boy's curiosity, Adrian stepped closer. "Sir, are you all right?" The janitor flinched, as if pulled out of a dream. He gave a small smile, but it was tired, not real. "I am fine, son. Just remembering." "Remembering what?" Adrian asked carefully. The janitor hesitated. His eyes lowered. "A time when I was not a janitor." Adrian froze. The words hung heavy in the air. A life before this, the old man sighed and leaned back in the chair. His voice turned softer, almost like he was speaking to himself. "Long ago, I was not holding a broom. I was holding books. Books that I loved. I studied hard. Harder than anyone you know. Teachers praised me. Friends envied me. My parents believed I would be great." Adrian's eyes widened. "You were a top student?" The janitor nodded slowly. "Yes, top of my class. Some even called me a genius. I had dreams of becoming a professor, a leader, someone people would respect." Adrian struggled to believe it. How could this man, ignored by everyone, once be so admired? The fall the janitor's face darkened. His voice shook as he continued. "But life can turn with one mistake, one wrong choice. I trusted the wrong people. I believed friends who were not truly friends. I followed them into a path that destroyed me." Adrian leaned forward. His heart pounded. "What happened?" The janitor's eyes glistened. "Cheating. One exam, just once. I thought it would help. I thought no one would know, but they did. I was caught. My reputation was shattered in a single day, from genius to disgrace, from hope to shame." Adrian's breath caught in his throat. The weight of shame, the janitor's voice grew heavy. "My father never forgave me. My mother cried until her eyes dried. Teachers turned their backs. Friends disappeared. No one wanted to stand beside the boy who cheated." He looked down at his rough, calloused hands. "I left everything. I worked small jobs, then smaller jobs. Until one day, I found myself here, sweeping floors. Not because I was proud of it, but because life left me no choice." Adrian's eyes burned. For the first time, he saw not just a janitor, but a man who had lived through the pain he feared most. The boy's reflection, Adrian whispered, "So, you know what it feels like?" The janitor nodded. "Yes, son. I know what it feels like to be laughed at, to be called useless, to be abandoned. I know the fire of shame, and I know the silence of loneliness." Adrian's throat tightened. He wanted to cry, but instead he clenched his fists. "And yet, you stand. You live." The janitor's tired eyes softened. "Yes, because I learned something. Life will break you. But if you choose, it will also build you again, stronger." The unexpected question, Adrian's voice, trembled. "Why? Why are you telling me this?" The janitor looked at him with deep seriousness. "Because you must understand, failure is not the end. Even disgrace is not the end. You think you are broken now, but you are only at the beginning. My story is proof of what happens if you give up. Yours can be different if you keep fighting." Adrian felt his heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. Different, his story could be different. The father's shadow, but while Adrian listened to the janitor's secret outside the classroom unseen, a shadow moved, The billionaire had arrived at the school earlier than usual. He walked through the halls, ignoring teachers, heading straight toward his son's classroom, and there he paused. Through the door's small glass window, he saw his son, listening intently to the janitor, as if the old man was some kind of teacher. The billionaire's eyes narrowed. Who is this man? And what does he want with my son? The bond strengthens inside. Adrian leaned closer. Sir, do you regret it? Do you regret cheating? Do you regret ending up here? The janitor gave a sad smile. Every day. But regret is useless unless it teaches you. That is why I am here. To teach you what no one taught me, that honesty, patience, and respect are worth more than grades, money, or titles. Adrian's chest swelled with emotion. No one, not his father, not his teachers, had ever spoken to him like this. At that moment, Adrian made a silent promise. He would not give up. He would not let his life become another broken story like the janitor's. The days began to change. Not loudly, not suddenly, but quietly like the slow rising of the sun before dawn. Adrian was still the billionaire's son who failed tests. He was still mocked by classmates, doubted by teachers, and ignored by his father. But something inside him had shifted. The janitor's words lived in his mind, like a secret fire. Patience keeps us moving when everything else feels broken. Respect begins with the smallest. Job, failure is not truth. It's just a result. And slowly, silently, Adrian began to live differently. The new routine, he started waking earlier than before. Not because his father forced him, but because he wanted to. He read not only textbooks, but also simple stories, articles, even newspapers the janitor left behind. At school, when classmates mocked him, he no longer stormed out. He stayed seated, quiet but steady. When teachers scolded him, he listened without anger. And when he didn't understand something, instead of hiding, he asked questions. These were small changes, invisible to most, but they were the beginning of something big. The teachers whispered. The teachers began to notice. He looks calmer these days, one said. Yes, but he's still failing, another replied. Maybe, but look at how he takes notes now. He never used to. Do you think he might improve? Impossible. He's too far gone. But they kept watching. And though they didn't admit it, something about Adrian felt different. The bullies noticed too. His classmates noticed as well. Hey, failure boy, one sneered. Why do you even bother showing up? Normally, Adrian would have lowered his head and walked away. But this time, he looked the boy in the eye and said calmly, because every day I learn something, even if you don't see it. The bully laughed. But for the first time, Adrian didn't feel crushed. He felt strong. The janitor's pride, the janitor noticed most of all. He watched from the corner of the classroom, broom in hand, as Adrian sat straighter, listened harder, and worked longer. One afternoon, when the boy stayed behind, the janitor smiled and said, You're changing. Son, Adrian looked up, surprised. Am I? Yes, like a seed breaking the soil. No one sees the roots growing underneath, but one day they will see the flower. Adrian's chest warmed. For the first time in his life, he wanted to keep growing, not to please his father, but for himself, the father's suspicion. But while Adrian's spirit was quietly transforming, his father was not blind. The billionaire noticed his son waking earlier, returning home with calmer eyes, and even attempting to study without being told. At first, he thought it was a phase, but when it continued, he grew suspicious. What is making him change? Who is influencing him? One evening, he asked sharply, Adrian, why are you suddenly behaving differently? Who has been speaking to you? Adrian hesitated. His mind screamed to protect the janitor. No one, father. I'm just trying. The billionaire didn't believe him, and that doubt planted a dangerous seed in his heart. A test of character at school, a teacher handed back graded papers. Adrian's mark was low, still a failure. The class erupted in laughter. Some things never change. He'll always be useless. Adrian's face burned. But he remembered the janitor's words. Respect begins with the smallest job. He stood up and quietly collected the papers for the teacher, helping pass them around. The laughter slowed. Some classmates frowned in confusion. He had not won. But he had not broken either. The janitor's next lesson later. The janitor handed Adrian a small plant in a cracked pot. "Take this," he said. Adrian looked puzzled. "Why?" "Because this plant will remind you of yourself. Weak, maybe. Small, maybe. But with water, sunlight, and patience, it will grow. Care for it. And every time you feel worthless, look at this plant and remember you are still growing." Adrian took the plant home, hiding it from his father. Every morning, he watered it. Every night, he whispered to it, as if whispering to himself, "Grow, don't give up." The father's watchful eyes, but the billionaire's suspicion deepened. One afternoon, he arrived at the school unannounced. From his car, he saw Adrian talking to the janitor, again listening to him, nodding, almost like a student before a teacher. His jaw tightened. "So this is the man filling my son's head with nonsense." That night, he made a silent vow. He would find out who this janitor really was, and when he did, he would put an end to it. The school corridors buzzed with chatter, footsteps, and laughter. But underneath the normal noise, a darker plan was unfolding. Adrian had become too calm, too steady. His quiet confidence bothered the bullies who once fed on his weakness. They wanted the old Adrian back, the boy who lowered his head, who cried in silence, who gave them power. And so, a trap was set. The whispered planny in the corner of the playground. The bullies gathered. "Did you see him yesterday?" He didn't even flinch when the teacher shouted. One sneered. "He thinks he's smart now," another replied. "We need to remind him he's still nothing," the leader said, his voice low and cruel. The boys exchanged grins. Tomorrow, Adrian would learn that change meant nothing. Adrian's new morning. That same morning, Adrian woke early. The little plant sat on his desk, its leaves stretching toward the sunlight. He smiled, touching the fragile stem. "We're both growing," he whispered. His father hadn't noticed the plant yet. Adrian kept it hidden in his room like a secret treasure. He dressed, packed his bag, and carried a strange sense of peace with him to school. He had no idea what waited for him. The trap springs at recess. Adrian walked through the courtyard, holding a book the janitor had given him. Suddenly, dash, splash. A bucket of dirty water poured down from above, drenching him from head to toe. The courtyard erupted with laughter. Adrian froze, water dripping down his face, his clothes sticking to his skin. The bullies stepped forward, grinning. "Look at the golden boy now. Still failing? Still pathetic? Nothing's changed." The old Adrian versus the new Adrian for a moment. The old feelings returned, shame, anger, the urge to run away, to hide, to disappear. But then, the janitor's words whispered in his heart. Respect begins with the smallest job. Patience keeps us moving when everything feels broken. Adrian took a deep breath. Slowly, he put his book into his wet bag, wiped his face with his sleeve, and looked at the bullies. "I may be wet," he said calmly, "but I'm not broken. And one day, you'll see I'm not who I used to be." The courtyard fell silent. The bullies blinked, surprised. The teachers stepped in before the bullies could react. A teacher rushed over. "What is going on here?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing. The bullies stammered, pointing at each other. But the evidence was clear. The bucket lay on the ground, still dripping. The teacher's face darkened. "All of you, detention." Now, the bullies groaned, glaring at Adrian. Their plan had failed, but their hatred grew sharper. The janitor smiled later. Adrian sat quietly in the empty hallway, waiting for his clothes to dry. The janitor appeared, holding a towel. He handed it over without a word. Adrian smiled faintly. "You saw, didn't you?" The janitor nodded. "I did, and I am proud. You didn't let them define you." Adrian's eyes softened. "It hurt, but it didn't crush me. Not like before." "That," the janitor said gently, "is strength. Not shouting. Not fighting. just standing tall when they try to push you down. The fathers watch, but not far away. The billionaire's car was parked outside the school, through the tinted window. The father had seen part of the scene, the bucket, the laughter. His son, standing there drenched, he expected to see Adrian break, cry, or beg. Instead, he saw his son stand firm, steady, almost brave. The billionaire's eyes narrowed. Something or someone was changing his son, and he needed to know who. The bully's revenge detention only fueled the bully's anger. "This is his fault," the leader hissed. "He thinks he's strong now," another muttered. "We'll teach him a lesson he won't forget." The trap had failed once, but next time it would be worse. Adrian had passed one test, but the war was far from over. The sun dipped low, painting the school walls in shades of orange. Students had gone home, teachers packed their bags, and the corridors grew silent. Only two people remained inside the classroom: Adrian and the janitor. Adrian was practicing quietly, reading aloud from a book. His words were clumsy, but his effort was strong. The janitor guided him patiently, correcting softly, encouraging gently. It was a picture of peace until the heavy sound of polished shoes echoed in the hallway. The father arrives. The classroom door burst open. Adrian jumped, startled. The janitor slowly turned. The billionaire stepped inside, his suit sharp, his face carved with fury. His cold eyes scanned the room, landing on the old man with a broom. "So," he said, his voice like ice, "you're the one filling my son's head with nonsense." Adrian's heart pounded. "Father, please, silence." The billionaire snapped. His gaze never left the janitor. The clash of worlds. The janitor stood quietly, his broom resting by his side. His back was straight, his face calm, though his eyes carried a shadow of sorrow. "I only try to guide him," the janitor said softly. "Guide him?" The billionaire's voice thundered. "You, a janitor? You sweep floors, clean trash, and you think you can guide my son, the heir to an empire?" Adrian's chest ached. "Father, he's not what you think," the billionaire's glare cut him off. "He is nothing. And if you listen to nothing, you will become nothing." The janitor's courage for a long moment. Silence filled the room. Then the janitor spoke, his voice steady but low. "Sir, greatness is not built by titles. It is built by character. Your son has more strength in him than you allow him to see." The billionaire's face reddened with rage. "How dare you lecture me? Do you know who I am? Do you know what I built?" "Yes," the janitor said calmly. "I know what money builds, but I also know what it destroys." The billionaire's suspicion, the words cut deeper than expected. The billionaire stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "You speak boldly for a man in rags. Tell me who are you really? What is your game?" The janitor's silence was heavy. His eyes dropped for a moment, as if remembering the past he wished to bury. Adrian looked between them, fear twisting his stomach. "Father, he's only helping me. Please, don't hurt him." The billionaire ignored his son. His hand pointed sharply at the janitor. "I will find out the truth about you. And when I do, you will regret ever stepping near my family." Adrian's Pladrian rushed forward, desperation in his voice. "Father, you don't understand. He's the only one who believes in me. The only one who teaches me things I can actually use. Without him, the billionaire's hand rose, silencing his son. His jaw tightened, his pride unshaken. "You will not speak to this man again. Do you hear me?" Adrian's breath caught. His heart screamed against the command, but his lips trembled in silence. The janitor's response, the janitor finally broke the heavy silence. His voice was low, but each word carried weight. "You can lock doors. You can command silence, but you cannot stop truth. The boy will rise, whether you approve or not." The billionaire's eyes blazed with fury. For a moment, it looked as if he might strike the old man, but instead he turned sharply to his son. "Adrian, you're coming with me? Now?" Adrian hesitated, his feet frozen, his heart torn. "Now?" The billionaire roared. Slowly, Adrian followed. But his eyes lingered on the janitor until the classroom door slammed shut behind him. The lonely aftermath. Janitor stood alone in the empty classroom. His hand tightened around the broom. His heart ached not for himself, but for the boy who had finally begun to bloom. Only to be cut down by his father's pride. He whispered softly into the silence, "Be strong, son. Even if I am not by your side, remember, you are still growing." The broom slipped slightly in his grip. His eyes carried both sorrow and hope. The next morning, the billionaire was not at peace. All through the night, he paced across his grand study, restless. His mind replayed the janitor's words, "I know what money builds, but I also know what it destroys." It was more than defiance. It was knowledge. The janitor spoke like a man who had once stood high too high for someone now holding a strum dot. The billionaire's pride demanded answers. The investigation at dawn, he made a call. "Find everything about the janitor at my son's school. Name, past, family, everything. I want it in 24 hours. By evening." A thick file arrived at his desk. He opened it hand, froze. The pages told a story of brilliance, collapse, and disgrace. The janitor had once been a top scholar, celebrated for his mind. He had once been destined for greatness. But then came the scandal, cheating in an exam, disgrace before his peers, rejection by family, fall into poverty. The billionaire's lips curled into a cold smile. "So this is the man daring to guide my son? A fraud, a fallen star, a liar." The confrontation at school the very next day, he stormed into the school, file in hand. Teachers rushed to greet him, nervous under his presence. But he brushed them aside. He found the janitor sweeping near the staircase. "You," the billionaire said sharply, tossing the file onto the floor. Pages scattered across the tiles. "Your truth is exposed." Adrian, who had been nearby, rushed over and froze at the sight of the papers. His eyes darted across words he barely understood. Top student academic scandal, expelled. His heart pounded. This was the janitor's past. The public humiliation students gathered, whispering. Pointing, the billionaire's voice rang out, loud and merciless. "You see, Adrian? This is your hero. A man who cheated, who threw away his future, who now sweeps trash for a living, and you let him guide you?" Adrian's throat tightened. His heart hurt. He looked at the janitor, whose face was calm but pale, his eyes heavy with sorrow. "Father, stop, please," Adrian begged. But the billionaire continued, his pride fueled by rage. "This man is nothing but a failure, and failure has no right to teach my son." The janitor's truth finally, the janitor spoke. His voice was quiet, but strong enough to cut through the murmurs. "Yes, I failed. I cheated. I fell. And I lost everything because of it." Gasps spread among the students. Teachers shifted uncomfortably. The janitor continued, his eyes steady, his tone unwavering. "But I learned that a mistake, even the worst mistake, does not define the rest of your life. That is why I sweep floors with honesty now, instead of living with pride and lies. That is why I teach your son not from success, but from pain. Because I know where his road can lead if he loses hope." Adrian's chest swelled with emotion. His eyes burned with tears. The billionaire's fury, the billionaire's fists clenched. His pride could not accept these words. "You call this teaching?" Filling his head with weakness. "I will not let my son learn from a failure like you." He turned to Adrian. "This man is nothing. You will never see him again." Adrian's voice shook, but it rose louder than ever before. "No, Father. He is not nothing. He is the only one who makes me feel I can be more than what people call me. He is the only one who sees me, not your money, not my failures, me." The crowd fell silent. The billionaire's face darkened with shock and rage. The janitor's pained. Janitor placed a hand gently on Adrian's shoulder. His voice trembled, filled with emotion. "Son, listen. Your father is right about one thing. I am a failure. My past is scarred. My name is stained. But if my failure can stop you from falling like I did, then maybe my life still has meaning." Adrian's tears spilled over. He clung to the old man's arm, refusing to let go. The school's division teachers whispered among themselves. Some pitied the janitor. Some sided with the billionaire. Students looked on, confused but moved. For the first time, they saw the billionaire's son defending someone weaker. Standing up not with pride, but with courage. The principal approached nervously. "Sir, perhaps we should silence." The billionaire roared. His pride would not bend. His power would not be challenged, not by a janitor, not by his own son. The janitor's past was no longer a secret. Students whispered in corridors, teachers exchanged glances, and rumors spread like wildfire. Some mocked. Some pitied. Some simply watched in silence. But no one felt the weight of it more than Adrian, the man who had become his secret teacher. His hidden strength had been dragged into the open and shamed. Yet instead of weakening Adrian, it had planted something new in him. Fire. The ride home, the billionaire's car sped down the road, its silence heavier than steel. Adrian sat stiffly in the back seat, his wet eyes staring out the window. His father sat beside him, stone-faced, his pride burning hotter with every breath. Finally, the silence broke. "You will never speak to that janitor again," the billionaire said coldly. Adrian didn't answer. "Do you hear me?" This time, Adrian turned. His voice trembled, but carried strength. "No, father." The car swerved slightly as the billionaire jerked in shock. "What did you say?" "I said no. I won't leave him. He's the only one who believes in me." The billionaire's eyes blazed. But Adrian didn't flinch. The house of silence that night. The mansion was filled with storm. The billionaire locked himself in his study, pacing, furious. How dare he defy me? My son defying me for a janitor? Adrian sat in his room, clutching the little plant the janitor had given him. He whispered to it like a friend, "I won't give up. I won't let him silence me. Not anymore, for the first time." Adrian felt the courage to stand even if his knees shook. At school again the next day. Adrian walked into school with his head high. The whispers followed him. His friend is a cheater. He defends a janitor. How pathetic. Like father, like son, both will fall. But Adrian didn't bow his head. He sat in class, opened his book, and studied. At recess, when the bullies approached, sneering, "Where's your teacher now, failure boy?" Adrian looked them in the eye. "He's inside me, and that's enough." The bullies blinked, unsettled by the calm in his voice. The janitor, however, had grown distant. He swept the halls quietly, avoiding Adrian's gaze. Shame lingered in his eyes. He feared his presence would only bring the boy more pain, but Adrian refused to let the distance grow. After school, he cornered the janitor near the stairwell. "Why are you avoiding me?" Adrian demanded. The janitor sighed. "Because my past is a stain." "I don't want it to cover your future." Adrian shook his head fiercely. "Your past doesn't scare me. It teaches me. You made mistakes, but you didn't give up. That's what I need. That's what no one else gives me." The janitor's eyes softened, a tear threatening to fall. You are stronger than I was at your age." The father's control tightens but outside the school walls. The billionaire made moves of his own. He called the principal. "I don't want that janitor anywhere near my son. If I find out he has spoken to him again, you will regret it." Fear gripped the administration. Rules tightened. The janitor was ordered to keep away from students, especially Adrian. But Adrian did not care. The fire inside him only grew stronger. The first stand at home that evening, at dinner, the billionaire spoke without looking at his son. "Tomorrow, I have arranged for a private tutor. Someone worthy. You will no longer waste time." Adrian set down his fork, his hands trembling slightly. "No, father. I will study on my own." The billionaire's head snapped up. "What did you say?" "I said no. I don't need your tutor. I don't need more shouting. I need to find my own way. The table fell into silence. Servants froze. The billionaire's voice dropped, cold and dangerous. You are my son. You will obey me. Adrian's chest rose and fell rapidly, but his voice did not break. I am your son, but I am not your shadow. The billionaire's rage, the billionaire slammed his fist onto the table, dishes clattering. You think you're strong? You think a janitor makes you wise? You are nothing without me. Adrian stood, his hands trembling, but his head high. Maybe I am nothing now, but at least I will become something on my own. Not because of your money, not because of your name, because of me. The words shook the air like thunder, for the first time in his life. Adrian had shouted back the janitor's prayer that night. The janitor sat alone in his small room near the school storage. He held an old torn book once his own when he was a student. He closed his eyes and whispered, God, don't let him fall as I did. Give him the strength I never had. Let my failure become his ladder. A tear slipped down his wrinkled face. For the first time in years, he felt hope not for himself, but for the boy who dared to defy even his father for truth. The mansion was colder than ever. Not because of the marble floors or the tall glass windows, but because of the silence that lived inside it. Adrian had defied his father. For the first time, he had said no, and the word had echoed in every corner of the house like thunder. A father's fury, though. Billionaire sat in his study late into the night, his glass of wine untouched. He stared at the fire, his mind burning hotter than the flames. How dare he? He whispered. How dare my own son choose a janitor over me? His pride built on years of wealth, power, and fear had been shaken, and men like him did not forgive easily. He picked up the phone. Tomorrow, he said coldly, remove that janitor from the school. I don't care how. I don't care where he goes. Just make sure he's gone. Adrian's sleepless night in his room, Adrian could not sleep. He lay awake, staring at the little plant on his desk, the one the janitor had given him. Every leaf whispered courage. Every small root whispered strength. He remembered the janitor's words, failure is not the end. It is the start of something new. Adrian clenched his fist. If father throws him out, I'll fight. I'll stand. I won't let it happen. For the first time, Adrian felt like his life was not just about passing or failing a test, it was about standing for something. The next morning at school, something felt different. The janitor wasn't sweeping the halls. His bucket and mop were gone. The corner where he usually hummed old songs was empty. Whispers rose quickly. They fired him. The billionaire had him removed. He's gone for good. Adrian's chest tightened. No, he whispered. It can't end like this. Confrontation at school when Adrian reached the principal's office. He found the truth. The janitor sat there, his face calm but his eyes tired. The principal avoided Adrian's gaze. Your father has made certain requests, the principal said softly. We can no longer keep him here. Adrian's voice cracked. You're letting him go? After all he's done? The janitor raised a hand. Adrian, it's all right. Don't fight this. It's not your battle. But Adrian shook his head violently. No, it is my battle. You're the only one who stood by me. If I stay silent now, then I'm nothing. The father arrives, is summoned by fate. The billionaire himself entered the office. Tall, proud eyes, sharp like knives. He looked at Adrian, then at the janitor. This ends today, he declared. My son will no longer waste time with you. You are finished here. The janitor stood slowly. His hands trembled, but his voice was steady. I never wanted your son's money. I only wanted him to see his own strength. The billionaire's lips curled into a sneer. You teach strength. You couldn't even control your own life. Adrian's heart pounded. He could feel the breaking point rising. The boy's explosion, something snapped inside. Adrian. He slammed his hands on the desk, his voice louder than ever before. Stop it, father. Just stop. The room froze. Adrian's eyes burned with tears, but they carried fire. All my life you've called me weak. All my life you've made me feel like nothing. But do you know why I failed every test? Do you know why I couldn't win? The billionaire glared, but Adrian didn't stop. Because I was drowning in your shadow. Because I never believed in myself, and you never let me. But he did. Adrian pointed at the janitor. He believed in me when no one else did. That's why I won't let you take him away. The billionaire's face darkened with fury. You dare raise your voice to me? Adrian's voice shook, but he stood tall. I dare, Father, because for the first time, I'm not afraid of you. The janitor's words, the janitor placed a hand on Adrian's shoulder. His eyes were wet. Son, you don't need to fight for me. Fight for yourself. Show him you can rise. Not with anger, but with truth. Adrian wiped his tears, his chest heaving. For the first time, he felt taller than his father. The billionaire's warning, the billionaire pointed a finger at Adrian. If you walk out of this room with him, you are no longer my son. The silence was heavy. Adrian's body shook. His heart screamed, but then softly, he whispered the words that would change everything. Then I will walk. The hallway of whispers, Adrian stepped out of the office with the janitor at his side. Students in the hall stopped. Some gasped. Some whispered, did he just stand against his father? He's leaving everything. For the janitor? Adrian's hands trembled, but he didn't stop walking. Every step was heavy, but every step was free. Adrian had walked out of the principal's office. Head held high, but his heart thundered inside his chest. Every step with the janitor by his side felt like walking against the whole world. He had chosen courage, but courage always had a price. The mansion's locked that evening. When Adrian returned home, the gates of the mansion did not open for him. The guard looked down, nervous. Sir, I have orders not to let you in. Adrian froze. What do you mean? This is my home, the guard's voice dropped. Your father said. You are no longer welcome here. Adrian's chest tightened. His home, his bed, his childhood memories, locked away by pride. For the first time, Adrian stood on the outside of his own house. The empty streets, he walked aimlessly down the streets. The night cold against his skin. He had money in his pocket, but no direction. Passersby glanced at him some, recognizing him as the billionaire's son. Isn't that the rich boy? What's he doing here? Alone? Whispers stung his ears, but Adrian kept walking. At last, he found himself near the small storage room where the janitor lived. The janitor's shelter, the janitor opened the door. Surprised to see Adrian standing there with a suitcase. Adrian, what are you doing here? Adrian's voice cracked. He locked me out. He said, I'm no longer his son. The janitor's eyes filled with sorrow. He pulled Adrian inside. My boy, I warned you there would be a price. Adrian sat on the old bed, his shoulders heavy. I don't care. At least I'm free. At least, I didn't betray myself. The janitor placed a hand on his shoulder. Freedom's not easy, but it is real. And now, you will learn what strength truly is. The billionaire's thread back at the mansion. The billionaire poured himself a drink, his anger still burning. Let him see the world without me, he muttered. Let him beg to return. Then he will learn who holds the power. But even as he spoke, a shadow of doubt passed through his heart. For the first time, his son had not cowered. His son had walked away, and that thought haunted him more than he admitted. The next day at school, when Adrian arrived at school from the janitor's modest shelter, the whispers grew louder. Did you hear? His father kicked him out. He lives with the janitor now. What a fall from riches to rags. Adrian kept his head high, but every word cut deep. Still, when he sat in class, he studied harder than ever. For the first time, he wasn't learning to please his father, he was learning to prove himself. The janitor's lessons deepen each evening. In the quiet of the storage room, the janitor taught Adrian more than schoolwork. He taught him discipline. He taught him how to wake early, how to work with his hands, how to face mockery with silence, and most of all, he taught him how to carry dignity even when the world stripped everything else away. Adrian listened. absorbed, and grew. A letter from the mansion 1 week later. A letter arrived. It bore the billionaire's seal. Adrian's hands trembled as he opened it. The words were short, sharp, and cruel. If you wish to return, you will cut ties with that man. Otherwise, you are no longer my son. Adrian's eyes burned. He showed the letter to the janitor. The janitor sighed deeply. I do not want to be the reason you lose your father. Adrian shook his head firmly. You are not the reason. His pride is, and if I bow to it, I'll lose myself. I'd rather lose the mansion than lose my soul. The breaking rumors spread even beyond the school. Newspapers caught whispers. Billionaire's son chooses janitor over fortune. Business rivals of the billionaire mocked him. Your empire is vast, but you cannot control your own son. The billionaire's fury grew hotter. He vowed to crush the janitor once and for all. The janitor's warning one night. As Adrian studied by candlelight, the janitor spoke softly. Adrian, storms are coming. Your father's pride will not rest. He will test you harder than ever before. Adrian looked up, eyes determined. Then let him. I'm ready. The janitor's lips curved into the faintest smile. You are no longer the boy I met. You are becoming a man. Weeks had passed since Adrian left the mansion. The golden boy of luxury now walked to school from a tiny storage room. Carrying books in his hands instead of servants carrying them for him, the whispers never stopped. Some laughed at him. Some pitied him. Some admired him in secret, but Adrian kept walking, his steps steady, his eyes forward. He was no longer the boy who failed every test. He was becoming something else, someone stronger. The billionaire's challenge one evening. The billionaire sat in his grand study, staring at a pile of newspapers, each headline cut like a blade. Billionaire's son chooses janitor over fortune, from riches to rags. The boy who defied his father, business partners whispered, rivals mocked. His empire trembled not because of money, but because of shame. At last, the billionaire slammed his fist on the desk. This ends now. If he wants to prove himself, let him. I'll give him one chance at a test he cannot pass. He picked up the phone and called the principal. The announcement. Next morning, the school buzzed with shocking news. The principal stood before the students, clearing his throat nervously. There will be a special examination. One test designed to measure not only knowledge, but character. The highest challenge in the school's history. Whispers spread like fire. Who is it for? Why so suddenly? Then the principal said the words everyone expected but still gasped at. It is for Adrian. Son of the billionaire! The hall erupted. A special test, just for him. He'll fail. He always fails. Or maybe this time, he'll prove himself. Adrian stood silent, his heart pounding. The janitor approached quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. This is the storm I warned you about. But storms also reveal who can stand. Adrian nodded slowly. I won't run. Not this time. The preparation for days, Adrian studied harder than ever before. The janitor sat beside him, guiding, encouraging, reminding him of the lessons beyond books. Knowledge is power, yes, the janitor said. But wisdom is greater. Wisdom is knowing how to use what you learn. Adrian listened carefully. He no longer just memorized, he understood. Every late night, every tired morning. Every page he turned became a brick in the bridge toward his new self. The test, Datha. Big day arrived. The school hall was packed with students, teachers, and even reporters. Cameras flashed. Notebooks scribbled at the front sat the billionaire himself, watching with eyes as sharp as knives. The test papers were laid out. The principal announced. This exam will be the hardest we've ever given. But remember, it is not only about correct answers. It is about truth, discipline, and courage. Adrian's hands shook as he picked up his pen. But then he remembered the janitor's words. Breathe, believe, begin. And so he began the questions. The exam was brutal. Complex problems, twisted questions, riddles meant to confuse, but Adrian took them one by one. He remembered the nights of practice, the mistakes he had corrected, the patience the janitor had taught him. Each question was like a mountain, and each time he climbed, the hall grew silent as students whispered in awe. Is he actually doing it? He's not giving up. Even the teachers, who had once mocked him, leaned forward in surprise. The final question at last. Adrian reached the final page. The question was simple, but cruel. It asked, "Who are you without your father's name?" Adrian froze. His heart pounded. This wasn't just a test of knowledge. It was the question of his life. Slowly he wrote, "I am Adrian. Not a shadow. Not a failure. Not just a son of wealth. I am someone who learns, who falls, and who rises again. I am myself." He put down the pen, tears in his eyes. The results of the exam ended. Papers were collected. The principal stood at the podium, his voice trembling. Never in the history of this school has a student shown such growth in such little time. Adrian, you did not score perfectly, but perfection is not strength. What you showed today was greater. You showed courage, honesty, and wisdom. And for that, you have passed. The hall erupted in applause. Students who once mocked him now clapped. Teachers who doubted him now nodded with respect, and in the back, the janitor wiped a tear from his eye. The father's silence, the billionaire sat frozen. For the first time, he saw his son not as a weak boy, not as a shadow, but as a man. Adrian turned toward him, his eyes steady. "I don't need your empire, Father. I don't need your name. I only need the chance to live as myself. And today, I proved I can." The hall fell silent, waiting for the father's reply. The billionaire's lips trembled. For a moment, he looked small, not the giant of wealth, but a man stripped of pride. At last he whispered, "You are no longer a boy?" The janitor's truth after the ceremony. The janitor approached Adrian, smiling softly. "You did it, son. You passed the final test." Adrian shook his head. "No, we did it. Without you, I'd still be lost." The janitor's eyes shone. "Perhaps. But remember, strength was always inside you. I only helped you see it." Adrian hugged him tightly, something he had never done before. "You're more than a janitor. You're my true teacher."